Only do what is in my job title? Fine, good luck paying employees, by user Epic Sausage 69. So, I work for a construction company as an inventory admin. My job is to basically schedule counts of our warehouse and input the numbers they give me for inventory. Then try to see what the problem is when the numbers on the last count and current count don't add up. There is a little bit more to it, but I will not bore you with the specifics. The problem with this job is that when you have been doing it long enough and are good at it, there is less work to do. In the beginning, when counting one rack out of 60 racks of material would take a few days, it was fine because I was always busy. But now that everything is in order, the entire warehouse can be counted in 3 days. This leaves me bored for most of the time. So, to fix this, I studied up on our cloud-based ERP service that we use for all internal and external transactions and have become sort of an expert on it. Every single aspect of this company uses this ERP service to do their job. Timesheets, HR, payroll, accounting, scheduling, management, manufacturing, ordering from vendors, delivering, inventory, etc. all runs through this ERP service. So it is very important that this service is up and running perfectly 24/7. I became so proficient in this service, that our VP decided to cut ties with our consultants of the ERP because I could do what they did but better, quicker, and much cheaper. For reference, we were paying these consultants $5,000 a month just to be on standby if we needed them for some sort of problem that could arise from using this ERP, and had to dish out more money to fix those problems depending on how many hours of their time was spent to fix said problems. Not sure on their exact rate, but it was something like $200 an hour, and they took weeks to fix anything, while I could fix the problem in time for my daily afternoon shit break. I never got an official job title or raise of any kind for being an expert on this service. The company just saw me being able to do it and let me fix things that happened, so they no longer needed the outside help. I wasn't too upset because it gave me something due, so I was glad to help the company save money, even if none of that money fell my way. Skip ahead a few months. We now have a new warehouse manager, and someone in the warehouse fucks something up in inventory by sending a bunch of materials to the wrong job with no records of it being shipped. We are talking $500,000 fuck up here. In the same day, our ERP had an update that caused a bunch of bugs with our accounting department. So, I decide to work on the ERP problem first, because the warehouse fuck up is more of a delay fuck up and not actually stopping anybody from doing their job at the moment, while this accounting problem means our bills are not able to be paid. You can guess what kind of issues we will have if bills are not paid. The ERP bugs turn out to be quite big and numerous, so it ends up taking me a couple days to figure out, but I fix it before any bills are actually due and decided to take lunch a little early to celebrate a victory. Crisis averted. New warehouse manager storms into my office after I get back from lunch and is livid. Apparently, the bosses were pinning the blame on him for the warehouse fuck-up. And considering he is the one who oversees shipments and personnel in the warehouse, the blame is rightfully placed. He starts laying into me, asking why I have not fixed the problem yet. Yelling and screaming like a child. I tried explaining that I was fixing an ERP issue and have not had time to look at the warehouse problem yet. He gets even more angry and notes that it is funny how I have time to take early lunches but not do my job. That started to piss me off, but I held my tongue and kept calm about the situation. He then ordered me to only do what is in my job title and to leave the ERP bullshit to the people competent enough to handle it, as he put it. Since this guy was technically my supervisor, I had no choice but to obey. I asked him to send me that in writing, and he snarks and storms back into his office. 5 minutes later I get an email stating that under no circumstances am I to work on anything related to ERP unless it involves inventory. QMC. I do nothing but inventory from that point forward, knowing damn well that we would be essentially coasting until we hit a problem that I would refuse to fix. Sure enough, not even a week later I get an email from HR that some sort of bug in the ERP system was preventing them from accessing payroll to pay employees this week. I reply an apology that I am no longer able to work on ERP bugs due to supervisor, and to refer to the ERP system help guide for further assistance. I knew the help guide was not going to help her in the slightest, but it was no longer my problem, so I was not going to deal with it. Skip a few days later to Friday. I checked my bank account in the morning before getting to work and laughed because there was no money deposited. That problem never got fixed. I hurry up and get to work, excited to see the chaos unfold. And what I was expecting was an understatement. When I show up to work, I see the entire warehouse staff of 50 people walking out of the front door. I stopped one and asked why they are leaving, and they replied with, "I didn't get paid today, so I am not coming back until I do." I go into the office and see the warehouse manager in a panic. He has jobs that need material and nobody to load it onto trucks or deliver. I ask him if he needs help with anything and he just screams at me to leave his office because he is getting phone calls out the ass from superintendents of jobs asking why our material has not arrived yet. I pass by HR on the way to my office and see a bunch of the bosses huddled up over her computer with her with angry and confused expressions on their face, I guess trying to figure out the problem. I felt bad for her because it really was something out of her control, but I knew she would ultimately be okay because she had been there for so long that they would never fire her. When I get to my office, I see the VP waiting for me there. He has a very pissed off expression on his face. When we get inside, he demands to know why I did not fix the problem in HR when she emailed me about it. I replied that I am no longer allowed to work on ERP problems as it is not in my job title. He has the most shocked look on his face and asked why all of a sudden I had a change of heart. I show him the email from warehouse manager and I could see the dots connect in his head. He immediately storms out and I see him heading straight to the warehouse manager's office. They were in there for a few hours but eventually he comes back to my office. He seems calmer now and asks me politely if I can fix the problem in HR and if I can resume fixing the ERP if needed. At this point I liked the relief of responsibility and told him I would only do it if he put it officially in my job title along with a raise. His calmness turned to anger again and he says I cannot believe you, as he storms out and returns to his office. A few hours later, he sends out a mass email that he has hired the old ERP consultants to fix the problem and that next week, everyone would be paid for the money they are owed, along with the money they earned if they returned to work. This one surprised me as he would rather pay over $60,000 a year to consultants than give me a few extra bucks an hour for better work. I think he expected me to change my mind and just do it for my own paycheck, but I decided to wait because I knew how these consultants were and if they managed to fix this problem in a week, I would streak naked through the office. Most of the warehouse staff agreed to return but were still upset about not getting paid. Sure enough, next Friday comes around. Nobody gets paid again. At this point it is becoming a real problem and the entire staff is becoming agitated. They have bills to pay. I even heard a bunch of the warehouse talking about some competitors nearby they could go work for. At this point, I even considered just fixing the problem because the warehouse didn't deserve to be treated like that due to poor management. Maybe I am the asshole here for this, but I am severely underpaid and can barely afford my apartment. There is no reason I should do extra work for free. That same day, the VP returns to my office and hands me papers. These papers said that I would be promoted to a newly created position that dealt with inventory/ERP upkeep. It would be its own department and he would be my direct supervisor, also came with a hefty raise. All I had to do was sign and agree. I looked up at him after reading the paper and he had the saddest look on his face. Please just sign it, the consultants said it would take them weeks to get around to fixing it due to the high volume of clients they have taken on and we cannot keep skipping paychecks. I happily signed it and immediately got to work on the HR issue. Managed to even fix it that same day. It was just a simple problem with the permissions of HR and payroll in the ERP due to the update. TLDR, I was doing work outside my job title. Supervisor gets mad and tells me no. I stop and company is unable to pay employees for 2 weeks. Vice President finally caves in and gives me promotion to do said work outside my job title along with a raise. We must use our initials as our username? Okay, fine, by user Jeffrey_Friedel. When I started graduate school in computer science in the late 80s, back when there was one monolithic mainframe that everyone had accounts on, I requested the username jfriedel, as I'd had that on every system I'd ever been on. The sysadmin, who was master of his tiny domain, seemed to take great pleasure in denying my request, citing policy that people use their initials. Everyone had 3-letter usernames, from the dean down to the sysadmin, down to the lowest student. Fine, if your policy is that people use their initials, my username should be Jeff, as my legal name is Jeffrey Eric Francis Friedel. Forced malicious compliance. You could tell he was positively fuming inside, but he had no choice but to comply with the policy. I had the only username that not only wasn't 3-character line noise, it was my name. Smiling face with open mouth and smiling eyes. Edit, actually, if there were 2 people with the same initials, the late arrival would get a 2 tacked on, e.g. if Jordan Edward Flumey Flink Master showed up while I was still there, he'd get JEFF2. You want me to fly 12 hours earlier because it's cheaper, by user warm_tomato 2126. TL/DR, company changed my flight to save £80, fine, 2 hotels, 2 taxis and an extra day's pay please. Disclaimer, English is my second language but I've been speaking it since I was 5 so really should know better. I'm on a laptop so any formatting errors are because I'm dumb. 56M in the UK, was working in Africa as an operations manager for a large global security company from 2009 to 2014. The country I was working in had been through a long civil war and was very underdeveloped, think no paved roads, people living a very traditional African lifestyle. At the time I'd been working there on a 10 weeks in country, 2 weeks at home rotation for about 4 years. I'd flown to and from work so often that I had the journey down to the bare minimum travel time, and it worked out the cheapest option for the company because travel days were paid from when I left home. The shorter my journey the cheaper it worked out for the company. Someone in the head office had looked at cutting down on travel costs, probably to make themselves look good and get promoted. As a result I got an email after a week at home saying they had changed my normal flight which was 5 p.m. on Sunday from my nearest UK airport, via Amsterdam, then on to Nairobi, connecting with a 9 a.m. flight to the war-torn country on Monday morning. The change was from a 5 p.m. departure to a 5 a.m. departure the same day, same route, and saving about £80. To clarify, the 9 a.m. flight from Nairobi was the first flight to war-torn country because the destination airport was the only surfaced runway in the country. It had no runway lights or radar so all flights had to be in daylight. Anyway, I agreed to the flight time change, but they had to move it to the Monday so I don't lose a day at home. All will become clear, they agreed because still saved £80 on the ticket, no skin off their nose. Once I got the flight confirmation I contacted the travel desk asking for hotel and taxi bookings. When they asked why I need these I explained that to make a 5 a.m. departure required a check-in at 3 a.m., so I needed a hotel at the airport on Sunday night because no trains were running to get me the 3 hours to the airport from home for that time of the morning. The flights they booked would get me into Nairobi for 7 p.m., after dark, so I'd need a hotel there and a taxi each way to and from the hotel to get me onto the 9 a.m. flight on Tuesday, the same flight I would have been on if I'd left at 5 p.m. but a day later. A couple of days go by and I got a phone call from the company travel desk telling me the travel plan was confirmed. I was on the 5 a.m. flight with a hotel reservation at my UK airport the night before, a hotel in Nairobi after landing and the taxi would collect me in Nairobi and drop me at the airport for my final connection. I asked about the cost saving, they said £80. I then asked about the hotels and taxis. They replied, "Oh, they don't come out of our budget, that's the operations budget so you're fine." I was happy. I was arriving back at work a day later, still paid the same amount with a night out in Nairobi to sweeten the deal. My boss on the other hand went nuts. Nobody had told him of the changes. My deputy flew out on the plane I flew in on, meaning I didn't get a handover of the work that was going on. On top of that the cost for hotels, taxis, and extra days pay had all come out of my boss's operational budget. I think the total amount added was almost £1,000, but hey, they save £80 on the flight cost. Customer asked me to count out a bag of live crickets in front of her, loses out on bonus crickets, by user Albino Raven 666. 32F, work part-time at a pet store to supplement my income as my salary of a full-time teacher doesn't always pay the bills plus I have a few pets and 20% off of in-store purchases is rather helpful. Anyway, one of the things we supply are live and frozen feeder animals for things like reptiles, certain aquatic creatures, and invertebrates. These include things like mice, rats, dubia roaches, bloodworms, mealworms, waxworms, superworms, and crickets. The mice and rats are either frozen or live, but either way they're easy to count and box up for the customer. Dubia roaches, mealworms, waxworms, and superworms are pre-packaged and price-marked, but the crickets are not. Crickets are kept in these large containers with mesh top, egg cartons for the crickets to climb and hide in, cricket food, and hydration. This means when customers ask for crickets, which we usually sell by the dozen, we have to count and retrieve them manually while putting them in a plastic bag we then fill with air and tie off to go with the customer. Our method for transferring the crickets is to lightly tap the egg cartons over a funnel-like object that doesn't have a hole at the bottom. We tap the crickets in, wrap the plastic bag around the mouth of the funnel, then tip it and lightly tap the crickets into the bag. Some crickets jump in out of order or cling to others, so often customers are given bonus crickets, which we're okay with, it's better than shorting them. So, customers are always given the right amount or often more than what they asked for without an increase in price. Most people get this. The customer in this story did not. A woman comes in and she asked for 4 dozen crickets, 48 crickets total. I went to the back, tapped the crickets from the cartons into the funnel and then counted them into the bag. As per usual, the occasional extra cricket tumbled or hopped in, probably putting the total to a bit over 50 by the time I was done. I bagged them, tied the bag, then took them to the counter. Now, I don't know if this woman was having a bad day or she had been stiffed by another store in the past, but she demanded that we count out the crickets in front of her before she pay for them. I explained that it was likely that she got more than what she asked for and counting out 48 crickets individually would take a little while. She insisted, she wanted to be sure we weren't ripping her off. So, I got one of those small, plastic critter keepers and a pair of tongs. I opened the bag, making it deflate and slightly more painful to work with, and inserted the tongs. Delicately so not to crush the crickets, I grabbed each one with the tongs and started counting slowly so not to crush the crickets with the tongs or lose my place while counting, something I do struggle with, and dropped each individually counted cricket into the critter keeper. So after about 5 to 10 minutes at the counter meticulously counting crickets with tongs, and maybe deliberately taking a little bit longer than I had to out of spite, a line was building up behind the woman and I was getting close to the end of my count. Eventually I hit the grand total of what she paid for, 48 crickets. And wouldn't you believe it? There were 10 left over in the bag, almost a whole extra free dozen she would have gotten had she not asked me to count. I said, "Oh. Would you look at that, my mistake. You were right, I did miscount. I'll put these other ones back and ring you up for the 48, I'll be right back." And before she could protest, I wandered off to dump the last 10 crickets back into the cricket container. When I came back to check her out, she was silent, not looking at me, did her best to ignore the irritated looks of the customers lining up behind her while I poured her 48 crickets back into a plastic bag. She paid then slunk off sheepishly out the door without a thank you or a glance back. I then got through the rest of the line quickly and apologized to the customers in line for the wait. I sent them home with some free samples, thanked them for their patience, then continued along with my shift. She never complained, and she did return to the location several times after. She never asked anyone to count crickets again. Edit, wow, so yeah, this kind of blew up. Just a couple things I want to respond to, common questions/statements etc. 1. People keep saying they've read this before. You have read similar stories. If you look at some of the older comments in this thread you'll see links to different stories with similar themes. A cricket story from 2 years ago, there's a feeder fish one, and one about a guy who sold mini samosas. There's also a lot of people in the comments who have worked similar situations sharing their stories. So while the situation in which this happened might not be unique, this is an original story I wrote yesterday based on a real experience I had at the pet store I work at. 2. Yes, I get paid horribly as an educator and that sucks. But I do love my teaching career. I enjoy working with students and seeing them grow and develop into the adults they will become. It's an honor to nurture and feed that development. But yes, we are underpaid and underappreciated. Thank you to those sympathizing. Want to lie about your natural hair color? Have fun with an awful dye job, by user Whiskahinative9. My wife, 22F, and I, 22M, got my little sister, 12F, some semi-permanent red hair dye for Christmas. She really wanted it and was very excited to use it on herself and her cousins. The hair dye is bright red, assuming you are light blonde or bleached, but sis has dark brunette hair so the dye becomes a dark burgundy on her. Everything that follows is what she told me, I wasn't there for any of it. Sis brought her hair dye to family Christmas at grandma's so she could share it with our plethora of cousins. One of our cousins, Anna 16F, is pretty entitled. She's a compulsive liar and manipulator. I keep my audio recording app handy on my phone when I'm around her should I have to use it because I don't trust her. Anna asked sis to have her hair dyed. Anna obviously has had her hair bleached to a medium light or light blonde. Sis asked Anna, "Is your hair bleached or dyed? If it is, then it's gonna turn out really bright and look crazy." Anna said, "No, what, haha, this is my natural hair color." This is where the malicious compliance comes in. Sis and my other cousins share a knowing look before getting to work. After they let the paste sit for a reasonable amount of time, they wash it out. Instead of pretty mauve accents like in Sis's hair, the back of Anna's hair looks like a bright, clowny, patchy mashup. Anna's response, I kid you not, was to look surprised and say, "Oh yeah, I did bleach my hair, I totally forgot this wasn't my natural color, lol." At this moment Anna's mother came in and was not happy. Anna wanted to take even more dye from my sister to try to even out the clown hair she had given herself, but Anna's mom stood up for my sister and would let her take more. This dye is only semi-permanent, but it will still take 10 to 15 shampoos to be fully washed out. I only learned all this because I took my sister out on a breakfast date after New Year's. I was worried that Anna had bullied Sis into using as much hair dye as she did. When I asked about it, it turns out Sis just wanted to let Anna pay for her obvious lie. Dr. My malicious 12y/0 sister allowed my cousin ruin her own hair because she didn't challenge her obvious lie. Edit to clarify some things. Okay, so it is seeming like some things are being missed or misunderstood.